Hey, what's going on, everybody? Bauer Brown here. Welcome back to the channel, guys. In the video that I have for you guys today, we're going to be doing some, we're going to be working with foliage. Oh yeah, foliage. That's right. We're going to be planting some weed. I know you're an idiot, Bauer. No, seriously, serious now. We're going to be doing some foliage. Okay. Now I know that we've done this in a previous video. All right. But we're going to be stepping it up a notch. Now, you know, if you've been following along, you know that I just recently did a video on field dimensions with bitmap, right? So we created fields in a way other than the Giants way, right? So we used infolayers and scripts and it sped up the process and it was a lot of fun and good thing to know, right? So we're going to be doing the same thing, except this time we're going to be putting down foliage. And with that, I mean, it's going to be, you know, maybe weeds or bushes or any kind of deco foliage and grasses. Yeah, that kind of thing. Anything that you would find in your foliage layer, right? So we're going to be doing that. It speeds up the process, you know, just like it did with the fields. The script itself is created by Kevin K98, the same guy that did the field dimensions with bitmap. As a matter of fact, he has a handful of scripts out there, all really good ones too, and we'll eventually learn them all. Alrighty, so if you're just joining me now, right, if you're not familiar with my videos, what I do recommend is that you go back and you watch that. You find that video. It was called Field Creation Made Faster and Easier. Go back and watch that video. It's a little bit of a long video, about an hour. But watch that one because there are some things that we're going to be going over in this video that we had already covered in that video. So just in case, you know, I kind of breeze through some areas and skim through. I'll try not to because I like to try to be, you know, pretty thorough with things. But just in case, go back and watch that video because there's going to be some techniques and things that we do in this video that we had previously covered. Alrighty, so with that being said, let's just jump right into this. I'm not gonna ramble on too much or dilly-dally too much longer here. So like I said, we're going to be grabbing the script from the same place because it's made by the same person, Kevin K98, LS Mod Company. So let's get over to that webpage. All right. So let's get into our browsers here and we're going to go to ls-modcompany.com. Okay. And do remember, like I said, if you're just joining us, that you do need to be registered. So if you're not already, register for a new account. Get yourself logged in and make sure you turn off your ad blocker because these guys, they do rely on ads. Now, I know I tend to block ads on most sites unless it's a site that I really stand behind that I support, which would be the case with these guys. So make sure you turn that off and support these guys any way that you can. Okay, so same as last time, we're going to go over to forum. Don't worry about any of the entries in the drop down list there. We'll just click on forum. Oh, and oh, look. 50% off. Wow, that is that I guess is what happens when you turn off your ad blocker. Anyhow, that's a pretty good deal, right? I kind of like that. Alrighty, and they're not too bad looking, I guess, right? Yellowstone, never heard of that, huh? Oh, I guess Yellowstone, is that the brand or is that Cotto? All right, Bauer, back to the script. Anyhow. So we're on the forum section here, okay? Farming Simulator 22, towards the bottom there, you see an entry for script collection. Let's click on that. Alrighty, so third entry from the top right here, we see Foliage Creator. That is the script that we are going to be working with. So we'll click on that. Alrighty. All right, so same deal as last time. Everything on this page is in German. So if you don't speak fluent German, you may want to use a browser like Edge or something, or yeah, Microsoft Edge, something like that. That does an automatic translation for you, or you can just follow along with the video and you won't need the translation at all. Alrighty. So very first thing that we want to do is we are going to bring, well, we'll start this way. We'll bring the script over to the editor. All right. Because I know some of you guys probably already have your editor open and there's two different ways, if you remember, that we can bring the script in here. All right. So click on it right here on section number 2, right? And you see foliagecreator.lua. Click on that and download it to a place where you'll be able to find it again, because we're going to be moving it, or you're going to open it and you're going to copy all of its contents. Okay. So the first method is to go into the Giants editor itself. Alrighty. If this is the way that you choose to do things. go up to Window and then go down the script editor. Over on your left-hand side there where you see the folder user, you can right-click on that and click Create Script. Okay, so the thing to keep in mind with this is if you give it a name, say you give it a name like Foliage Creator, once you paste in your new script, you see up top here where it says name right underneath author, foliage. Well, this one says foliage delete. Don't get too excited about this script. This works for an older version. I was working on it trying to update it for FS22, but it needs more work. But anyhow, the name that you see here is once you save this, okay, when you paste everything in here and you save it, this will now be the name that you see, this like foliage delete that you see there, not the name that you put into the box. Okay, the name that you put into the box is when you create a blank script. Like I'll show you how that goes. Like go to create script, right? And we'll give it a name called test script. Okay, test script. Alrighty, and then we'll click create. Okay, so now towards the bottom here, I got test script, right? You can see author is Bauer, name is test script. All right, so once I paste something in here, this name is going to change. Right now, you see test script on the left-hand side in that list, but once you paste this new code in there, whatever name that has, that's what's going to show up in here. All right, so this has got me once or twice in the past, and I don't want you guys to get confused and wonder, you know, what in the world just happened to your new script that you just put in there. So that's what's going on. Alrighty, so like I said, that is the one way that you can get your script put into the Giants editor, is that you can just go into the script editor itself, paste everything in there, and you'll be good to go. Okay, the second way, the very second way that we can do this is if you go over to your C drive or D drive, but you want to go to users. All right, go find your username. In this case, it's Bauer. We're going to go down to app data. Alrighty, now app data, if you do not see app data, remember that it's not that it does not exist. It's just that it's not visible. Okay, you're going to have to go into your folder options, and you will find a section in there that says, show hidden files and folders, something along those lines. Make sure that's checked, and then this should show up for you. Okay, app data. So go into your app data. Go into local and then scroll down until you see the version of Giants Editor that we are currently working with. And right now that would be 9.0.3, and click on that. In that folder, you'll see another folder called scripts. And then in this folder, this very script folder that you see right here, you can cut and paste your file right into here. Or the other alternative is when you are downloading that foliagecreator.lua, that you just save it right to this location. Okay, so I'm not going to spend any more time on that since we've already done that in a previous video, and I feel like I'm repeating myself. This whole video feels like deja vu, as a matter of fact. Alrighty, so from there, once you got the script, everything is put into your Giants editor. You can close that down. Okay, close down your Giants editor because we're going to go over to our mod map right now. Right, let's get into our mod map folder. I'm going to go into map, and I'm looking for my map.i3d, and I am going to right click on that and open it with a text editor. In this case, it's going to be Notepad++, so we're going to open that up. Alrighty, so the first thing that we're going to do is, let's see, we can do this in a different order this time, just so it doesn't feel like the same old video. We're going to make a section right at the very top there, right where it says files. We're going to make a blank line right beneath that. Oops. Okay, go back to our web page here to the LS Mod Company, right? In this very first section here where it says file ID, upper right corner of that box, it says copy contents. We're going to copy that. Okay, let's get back over to our text editor, and we're going to paste that in there right at the very top. Alrighty. Make mine nice and nice and even. Alrighty, so now I'm gonna hit Control F for find, and I'm gonna be looking for infoLayer name, okay? Because just like we did last time when we put the field dimension infoLayer in here, I'm gonna do the same thing. Oh, I already have Foliage Creator in here. Okay. But anyhow, let's keep going. Let's pretend you don't see that. That's not there. All right. So we're going to create right here above field dimensions. It doesn't have to. There's no particular order for this. Okay. Just so long as it's below the combined layers. All right. Just put it in with the rest of your info layers. It could be the first thing in the list, second thing on the list. Doesn't matter. Okay. Just make sure you put that in there, and you don't have to change anything at that point. Just paste it in there. Make sure you have that line pasted up top, this fruit density.grle. Now, last time we have done this, we changed that .grle to a PNG because we created our own. We're not going to do that this time. We could, but I feel like we've already done it, and you should know how to do that. So we're not going to create our own this time. We're going to use the one that they provide for us, okay? And now do remember that this file path needs to be correct. If it's not correct, it's not going to work properly, okay? So make sure you have this file path correct. And just like last time, if you're at all confused and you don't know how to get to your data folder, just scroll down to the bottom of this list a little bit here and look for some of your weight files, okay? And if it says data / or / I guess that would be gravel dirt or whatever, then you're okay. Okay. But if there's anything in front of that data, whatever's in front of that, you're also going to want to have in front of the data up here for your fruit density. All right. So basically, you just want to make sure that you know how to get to your data folder. Same as last time. All right. So keep everything the same. Don't change this one to a PNG this time. All right. Keep it a .grle because we're going to be using the one that they provide for us. All right. I'm going to delete mine out of there because I have a feeling there's one probably already floating around in here. Alrighty. Normally I start this blank and we go through the process together, but I guess I didn't realize that I'd gone through this once before with this particular map, so it's already in there. Not a big deal though. So like I said, get everything pasted in there. Like I said, everything that you need to paste in there can be found over here on this on the ls-mod company website. All right. So here's your info layer. Well, first we did the file ID, and we did that. And the very next thing that you wanted to do was to come down to this next section here where it says info layer name equals. Same thing that you would just copy contents, right? Head back over to your text editor there, hit Control F, looking for info layer name, same as we did last time, paste that in there. Okay. Wasn't sure if I skipped a part in there or not, so I just wanted to run through that one more time real quick. Alrighty, so hopefully you guys have a handle on that. If you've been following along with the videos, you should have no problem with that, okay? Now you will notice that in here, the options that we have 3 options, value 1, 2, and 3. We have grass deco, and forest, okay? If you look on the LS Mod Company website, when you scroll down here a little bit, option number 4 here that they give you, it basically tells you that you can create another option. All right. Now, I know that you don't know much about this script just yet, but what they're trying to tell you here, okay, I'm going to go back to my text editor really quick. All right, is that once we get into the script itself, I'm going to show you that there's sections that you can create. There's 3 of them already created for you. Now, personally, I only use 2 of them. I use grass and forest. Now, they're configurable, so you can customize these any way that you want to. All right, so just keep it in mind that you can add another section if you want. And when we get to that point in the script, I'm going to show you how to do that. All right. But on this end of it, right, for your map.i3D, if you do want to add one, like I said, just keep this in mind. All you would do is just duplicate one of these lines, right? So you would add another option, and where it says value, you would just change that 3 to a 4, and you would give it a new name. All right. Because what happens is you're going to have a section for like grass, and you're going to pick the things that you want in there. Do you want like meadow harvest ready? You're going to pick like certain types of bushes or weeds that you want in there. And you're going to leave it at that. You're going to pick a value as far as like the density of how much of these things that you want. All right. So instead of changing things around every time, you can create a secondary grass, like called maybe grass dense, and you can pick more of certain objects. All right. I'm not going to confuse you any more than I need to on that. So like I said, just make sure that you actually have the info layer in there, the Foliage Creator. You don't have to change anything. Just make sure it's pasted in there. And make sure the path to your fruit density.grle is also pasted in there. And then you can go ahead and save this map.i3D. Okay. Once we got that saved, we're going to shoot on over to our data folder in our mod map. Alrighty, and this is the folder where we're going to be putting our infoLayer, right? So our infoLayer underscore fruit density.grle. Now I already have one in here, but what you want to do is you want to go back to the LS Mod Company website. Alrighty, and right underneath the infoLayer that we copied, you'll see in this light blue here, it says infoLayer underscore fruit density.grle. That's what you want to download. So we're going to download that to our data folder. Alrighty, now the I don't want to say this. We'll get to that later. Just make sure you download it for now. I'll get to that in a little bit. What I wanted to say there. So make sure that's downloaded over here to your mod map folder, to your data folder. You can see that mine's already in there, my infoLayer underscore fruit density. Okay. And once you have that in there, we can fire up our Giants editor. Okay. We can get that all fired up. Alrighty. Let's get up here, open up our map. Alrighty. Great. So now that we have our map open, okay, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to look over on the right hand side of my screen here on my attributes, and I'm going to go down to infoLayer painting, and there you go. I see Foliage Creator, which is good. So that means everything was right. If you don't see it, that means you did something wrong. Okay, your file path is wrong, or maybe your spelling was wrong. It can't find the file. Your capitalization is wrong. You got to pay attention to all those things. They need to match up perfectly. Okay. But once you got that in there and Foliage Creator shows up, I'm just going to pick one of these like grass deco, and I'm going to turn on my infoLayer paint mode. Alrighty. So I already have something painted there, which is pretty cool. All right. So I don't really have to, I'm just going to test it and make sure that it works, which it does. All right. You don't have to do much more than this. Okay, and this works just like any other infoLayer. All right, now I'll explain something here to you in a minute of what I'm doing there. I just deleted some. Like I said, it works like any other infoLayer. All right, so if you remember when we did like our fields and stuff like that, same thing here. You would go through, you can pick grass deco, right? So the white layer is going to be your current layer that you're working with. And then same thing, if you want to switch layers, you can hover over top of the other layer, Control R, so you can switch back and forth. So you can work with more than one layer at a time. All right, not a big deal. So like right now, I just wanted to make sure I'm just testing to make sure that this worked, and it does. All right, we want to go over to the script now because there's some things I want to explain to you in the script. So we tested it, it works. We're going to go up to Window, we're going to go down the script editor. All right, I'm going to maximize this so I can see what's going on. I'm going to find my script. Alrighty, so very top of the script here, we have a path to our fruit density.grle. All right, and that's what we had just copied over to our data folder. All right, and just like last time, if you don't know how to get this path, you can just right click on this and copy as path. Okay, copy as path. Get back over here to your script editor, and then paste that in there. Now, the thing is, when you paste that in there, all of your slashes are going to be backslashes, okay? And you want to delete those or change them all over to forward slashes, all right? If you don't, it's not going to work right. So just be careful of that when you go through, you want to change all of those slashes. Alrighty, so once you have that done, you're going to do one for your infoLayer underscore fruit density. Make sure you grab the right files, right? And the next one is going to be the path for your field dimensions, your infoLayer underscore field dimensions. You might be asking yourself, field dimensions? That was the last video. What the hell are you talking about, Bauer? All right, so this is what I wanted to explain to you, okay? It's pretty cool that the way they did this, all right? Let me get back over to my map here. Now, you look, I have my round field right here below me, right? The reason that they want the path to your field dimensions, if you're using it, is because as you start coloring things in, so when I go into this paint mode here, you can see how I kind of colored over top of that field. As long as you're using that field dimensions per bitmap, okay? And when I say using, you have to have an active field in there. It can't be blank. You actually have to have your fields done. They have to be saved in your infoLayer. And what I mean by that is, let me see if I go over to my fields, okay? I'm going to highlight that. Actually, I probably didn't even need to do that. Let me just go over to my field dimensions. Okay, and I do have a field in there. I have that round field. You actually need a field in there like you see right here, okay? That has to be in there or it's not going to work, because what will happen now is I can color over top of that field when I'm doing my foliage creator. You can see my field underneath there. And when it puts the foliage down, it will not color over top of my field, all right, because it knows where it's at. Now, the thing about this is it doesn't work in every scenario. I mean, it does under the right circumstances. Let me explain what I mean. Your info layer, your fruit density info layer that we just downloaded from the LS Mod Company, the resolution on that, the dimensions is 4096 by 4096. All right. Now, the first time when I was goofing around with this, or when I shot the video on field dimensions, I made my info layer 2048 by 2048. They need to be the same size. Okay. If those two, the field dimensions and the fruit density, if they're not the same size, the GRLE files, it's not going to work the way you want it to. As a matter of fact, you're going to have some other errors. What will happen is somewhere else on your map, you're going to notice that that script isn't working. All right, that foliage isn't being laid down where you want it to, and that's why, because your GRLE files are not the same size. All right. So if you're starting this, if you're introducing this script to a map that's a better part of the way done, I recommend not using that field dimensions, right? The field dimensions with bitmap. And when I say not using it means you can just comment this out, right? Where it says the path to your field dimensions. Well, actually, you don't even have to comment that out. I would just leave it blank. I wouldn't put any path in here. I would just leave the quotation marks and that would be it. All right, because you can run into issues. Like I said, you'll have areas, since your resolutions don't match up, you're going to have areas on parts of your map that you're not going to be able to lay down grass or bushes or whatever you're trying to use this script for. It's not going to work in that area. All right, so this script is something that you generally want to do. You want to introduce this to your map when you're just starting your map, before you get into all this stuff like doing your fields and everything else. Okay. So keep in mind these two files, if you want to use that, where you're not painting over your fields. So if you want to use the field dimensions, right, they have to be the same size. All right. So what I did to get mine to work is I just went back to my field dimensions.grle and I bumped my resolution up to 4096 by 4096. All right. So now they both match and that works just fine. So like I said, again, I'll just kind of explain it. The reason that's there, all right, is so you can paint right over top of your fields or right up to the edge and not worry about painting on your actual field. Okay. Now that only works for fields. So like when you're painting here and you're doing your, when you're painting your foliage, and you do need to be careful of like roads and stuff like that, because it's only going to avoid your fields. It's not going to avoid anything else like roads and whatever else, parking lots and whatever else you have going on there. Okay. All righty. So let's go back to the script again. I'll explain a few more things about what's going on inside of there. All righty. So like I said, if you're not going to use this field dimensions, like let's say your fields are already done and you don't want to change your resolution, you could try messing around with the fruit density resolution. I haven't done that yet, so I can't give you any answers on whether or not you can go down with that. I would think that you can. I'm not sure on that one, though. I would think that you know what? I'm not going to give you an answer because I'm not sure. I know that you can go up because you can scale up to a bigger map. I've done it. I've gotten it to work on bigger maps. So you would also scale up your fruit density. So scaling down, I'm not quite sure. That's something you may have to test. I haven't done that yet, so I apologize about that. All righty. So going back down the list here. Like I said, again, if you're not going to use that field dimensions, just kind of delete that. All righty. You don't have to use that. And in that case, if you're not going to use it, just make sure you go really nice around the edges of your fields and stuff. You don't color over top of them. All righty. Okay. So next thing we have on the list here is to set the number of channels. All right. This is something you don't even need to mess with. All right. This is this bits isn't like the bits, like the color scheme type bits. This is the number of channels bits. And by number of channels, when you look over here on your like say your foliage layer painting or your info layer painting. You remember when we did the video on info layers and channels and stuff like that? That's what these are, like 2, 4, 6, 8. So we have 8 channels here under the Foliage Creator. All right, so that's what they're talking about. And you don't have to goof with that because we don't really have a reason to goof with that. So leave that alone. All right, everything can stay exactly the way it is. Alrighty, next thing on the list, we have count of random generation, high value equals more random foliage. All right, so this max factor attribute that you see here, right? This variable for max factor, they have that set at 1,000,000. A good way to think about this is I guess it is random. The way you want to look at it is when you're putting down your foliage, if you want like more foliage, like a denser foliage, then you would go with a higher value. If you want, like say bushes, for example, if you want less bushes, more spread out and stuff like that, then you want to go with a lower value. All right. Now, sometimes I don't mess with this too much. I'll keep this where it's at and I'll try and set that value a little further down. All right. So now next on the list, we got combine layers. Okay. Now the combined layers are your texture files themselves, right? So there's 124, 125, 126. Those are the actual IDs, right? The ID number of those combined layers of your texture files. Now you need a way to get those IDs. Okay. So you have to know what the ID is for each one of your textures. Now you can't necessarily go by what's in this list right here, because had you been working on your map and introducing new textures and stuff like that, your textures are going to be completely different. All right. So you need a way to figure out what yours are. Okay. Now, myself, I have a script here that says terrain layers, right? And that will actually tell me, I just highlight terrain and I can run that. And that tells me what all my IDs are for all of my textures. I am not sure where I got that script. I will double check it. And if I can figure out where I got it from, I'll post a link to it. But in any event, do you remember a video a little while ago? We did, we're creating these roads here, right? We're creating and painting roads using splines. And at that point, I had you to go over to the Farmer Boys modding website, and I had you download the updated spline tools from there, right? And if I go up to scripts here, right, and I go to updated spline scripts, in here as part of their scripts, especially like terrain paint, when you run terrain paint setup, it will also give you all of your texture ID numbers. Okay. So if you don't have this script yet, I recommend that you go over to Farmer Boys Modding, and you will be able to find this. These are your updated spline scripts you can see. Matter of fact, we can go over there really quickly, right? So we can have a look and, all right, so let's go to farmerboysmodding.com. Okay. And this is the same as the LS Mod Company website. You do need to be registered and you need to be signed in. I am not at this point. I'm registered. I'm just not signed in. But since I just started using this Opera browser, I don't think it's gonna. My password's probably not saved. So, but anyhow, you wanted to go to where did we want to go? I can't remember off the top of my head. Export spline. Okay, so right here, if you look at this very top section here where it says topics, right? At the very bottom here, you see terrain height, paint terrain, and spline placement script tutorials, right? If you click on that, somewhere in here, there will be a link right here. Link to installation posts. There's a link to that. And there's probably a link to download all of the scripts themselves, okay? So make sure you go over there, support these guys. It's an awesome, awesome script. I can't say enough about it. I use it for so many things. Not only that, but some of our future videos, we're going to be getting into using these tools extensively. So make sure you go over there, show those guys some love, download the script, and I'll show you really quickly how to use that to be able to get your terrain ID. So when you have a spline created, okay, you want to go up to Window, make sure your user attributes is open. All right, now this one, for some reason, I already have set up. But what you would do is when you would go into your scripts, All right, you would go into terrain paint setup. Now you have to have that spline highlighted, but when you go into the setup there for the terrain paint setup, make sure your console is also open. Okay, so when your console's open, you can kind of scroll through here. Alrighty, see where it says texture number 57 and so on and so forth. These are all my textures. It's giving you the texture number. All right, so it doesn't matter how you get it. You just need a way to be able to know what your texture ID numbers are. All right, and that's my recommendation, is to go over there to Farmer Boy's Modding and download the updated spline scripts. Oh my God, I can't talk tonight. My goodness. Alrighty, so in these updated spline scripts, okay, there's a bunch of stuff in here, right? So it's not just, painting. You can do, your terrain height. There's placement tools and CSV creators, all that good stuff, right? But that's not what this video is about. So like I said, just make sure that you can figure out what your IDs are. All right, so go back into the script there. Let's go back into our script editor. Okay. I already have it open. Alrighty, so next thing on the list where it says important note below, you can set the foliages, blah, blah, blah. You can read through that. I went through this and I figured it all out. A little bit of a learning curve to it. I will let you know right now that I went through all of that to figure out how all this works. And it turns out that I didn't even need it. So you could probably just skip by here where it says important note. Read over it if you need to, but like I said, I figured it all out and I didn't need it at all. I kind of think this might be a little bit of a holdover from it's like a copy paste thing from the FS19 version of this script, because they did have a version of this for FS19, and I think that's what that might be. Okay, but don't worry about that for now. Next thing we got no changes here. So guess what? Don't make any changes there, okay? And these are all your modifiers, and they should look familiar to you. Grass, deco foliage, ground foliage, meadow, deco bush, that type of thing. All right, so those are basically just giving IDs to those variables there, so you don't want to mess with that. Alrighty, so next down on the list, this is where we start getting into the sections where I said you can create a fourth section. All right, so the first section we have is grass, then we have grass deco, and then we have forest. All right, now the way that this works, and I'm going to go through one of these sections for you really quickly and show you. All right. If you want to create another section, keep this in mind that you're going to go from the first curly bracket here that you see, copy down, 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 and you're going to copy the next two curly brackets, including the commas. You're going to copy those. So you'll copy that section, and then you'll come down to the very last of it here, right? Where at the very bottom. Not the very, very bottom, but the bottom of the sections. And under the second curly bracket below forest, all right, create another space and you can paste this in here, okay, if you want to create another section. All right, so now let me explain the section to you. All right, so the first one we got here, name equals grass. So that's just a name. You can name it anything you want, not important, okay? The GRLE value is just a value that it uses when it writes all this information in a file so it can keep track of which section is which. So if you create a fourth section, see how the value is 1 for the first one, 2 for the second one, 3 for the third one, and guess what the fourth one would be? That's right, 5. I'm messing with you before. Yeah, I know, I'm an idiot. But that's what that is. That GRLE value is just keeping track of your sections, okay? So you don't really have to worry about that unless you're adding your own section and then you just want to go in order with them, alrighty? All right, so texture layer is exactly what it says. That is where you need the ID number of the texture. Okay, so you might be telling yourself, texture? I thought we were painting with foliage. We are, but it will also do a texture, okay? So the way this works is, say we have a grass area. Now, this is something I would typically use for like meadows and fields or around the edges of fields. Maybe not so much for like around buildings or a front yard, but more open areas is where I would use this, right? And then down below my forest, exactly that. If I'm creating a forest or something like that, I have a whole different set of foliage that I use in there. I use more bushes. I use like a few more weeds. I just use different foliages. Okay. Now in my meadows, like my fields, maybe not so much. I only have like a bush or two I might put down. I might, my foliages are a little bit different. All right. So in like a field, my texture layer would probably be grass or something like that. Under a forest, I would probably use that forest ground texture. All right. Now you don't have to use any texture at all. So let's say your map is already done. It's already painted. You don't want to mess with that. So then don't. So if you put -1, if you look down here under grass deco, see how it says texture layer -1. If you do the same thing up here, put -1, and it won't use that at all. It won't paint anything. As mine stands right now, it will paint a grass layer because 81 was the ID number for my grass texture. But I'm going to skip that. I'm going to turn it to -1 because mine's already painted. Don't need to paint it, but I can change that to anything I want. You just need to know the ID number for that texture, okay? So the next things that we got here is underground foliage and underground foliage modifier. All right, now the modifier is up here where it says no changes here. We see grass, deco foliage, ground foliage. All right, so let me explain the way that this works. You can consider this like a base layer, okay? So every time you put any of these things down, any of your foliages, like your bushes and deco foliage and stuff, you'll have like a grass, whether like this here is meadow and then 4. So let me show you what they mean by that. This 4. So if you go back to your map here, right? So you see the area that I have, let me go into Foliage Creator. This area that's all in pink, well, white, I'm going to change that to white. Okay. So this whole white area, this is where all my foliage is going to be laid down, right? So let me get back out of there. Now, the way I want it to lay down, the foliage, the grass layer, let's think about it that way. The grass layer that I want it to lay down, I usually use Meadow Harvest Ready. Okay, that's usually what I do. So if I go to Deco Foliage, let me go to Meadow. All right, because that was the modifier, was Meadow. And then 4, remember 4? Go 1, 2, 3, 4, Harvest Ready. So that's what it'll lay down. It'll lay down Meadow Harvest Ready. Okay, but say you want to use something different. Say you don't like Harvest Ready, you want green small. So your modifier would be Meadow, and then you would use the value of 2 for green small because that's the second on the list. All right, you understand that? Now it doesn't need to be Meadow. Okay, so maybe you want to use Deco Foliage. All right, and you want to use long dry grass. Okay, so now you would pick the Deco Foliage modifier. All right, and that was, if you look up here, okay, go back here. And if you look at your modifiers, you have one for Deco Foliage. And you would just take this right here where it says modifier Deco Foliage, just copy that. You don't have to copy the =2. And you would change modifier Meadow to modifier Deco Foliage. All right, and then for the long dry grass, you would just see what number on the list that is. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 13. All right. So it's the very bottom of the list, 13. So go back to our script here. So this right here under underground foliage modifier, it would say modifier Deco Foliage because you're grabbing that from up here. And right above that where it says underground foliage, you would change that 4 to a 13. So now instead of using Meadow Harvest Ready, it would use Deco Foliage, long dry grass. All right. Now I tend to just stick with grass, whether you do short, long, doesn't really matter. Just make sure that what you're picking out of here, and this is just for your grass layer, for your base layer. Okay. This isn't necessarily the foliage itself. This is just your coverall. Like, so your field is going to be covered in grass. Alrighty. So now the next thing down is your factor limit. I have this set to 10,000. This is the same thing. This controls how much of these random foliages you're putting down, okay? And these random foliages work the same way. Like the first thing in this list is a Deco Foliage 2, all right? So we can go back and see what that is. All right, so I have, oops, I want to be up here, Deco Foliage. And second thing on the list is Small Rumex, okay? So that's what that's saying is going to be going down, is Deco Foliage Small Rumex. Now say I want a bunch of that, okay? Because what it will do is it will go through this list and it'll just randomly distribute it, okay? But say you want more of that Small Rumex than you want anything else. You want a lot more of it. All you would do is just keep duplicating this line, right? Where it says modifier right? Foliage equals 2, you would do that again. You would just duplicate that line, foliage equals 2, foliage equals 2. So the more you duplicate that line, the more of that foliage you're going to get. You know, like right now, the way this looks, it'll be fairly even, right? There's no more of one thing than there is another. If you look at the layer just below that for the grass deco, you can see how they did that deco foliage 1. They have that 3 different times. So you're going to have a lot more of this than you are everything else in that list. All right. So now you just need to figure out, you know, what deco, you know, what foliages you want down there. So you can see here, you can be bushes. So they have 2 different bushes set up, like deco bush and then 4. So you would see what 4 is. So let's go over there and see what the deco bush 4 is. Just so you guys get a handle on how this works. You pick the deco bush modifier and you go 1, 2, 3, 4. That's super big. All right. So that's what that is. Is that right? You're not counting the blank space, by the way. There's some of these have a blank space up top. You're not counting that. You're just counting the entries. All right. And I am not on the right thing there. Oops. Oh, yeah, Bauer. Stop messing around. All right, there's the blank space. So I'm counting the entries. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, that's going to be deco bush super big. Okay, so that's what that is. Now you can change these to anything you want. You can put anything you want in there. Okay, so like I said, if you want to do a layer that this grass layer, you know, keep the factor limit pretty small because maybe it goes around your fields and stuff. You don't want too many bushes, you know, you don't want too much of that stuff. But maybe there's other areas where you do want a lot more of that, right? So you can create another section, right? Maybe call it grass dense. And you can change these up and add a lot more of it if you want to, all right? I haven't done that yet, but I'm sure somewhere in the future, you know, there's going to come a time where I will need another section. Right now, I'm pretty content with just using grass and using forest. You can see all the stuff that I have in forest. I have pretty much set up inside there, right? Because when you go through a forest, there's lots of bushes and weeds and all that stuff in there, and you get the idea, okay? So that's basically all that there is to this now. All right, now let's get back out of here. I'm going to hit save really quick. Okay, so getting back over to, I thought I did save it. Getting back to our editor here. All right, now the way this works is it works exactly the same way as your field dimensions, right? When you're working on your field. So what I mean by that is every time that you draw on your map and you add some a foliage layer there, you want to click save. You always have to save, so it writes that to the GRLE because it's using the GRLE, you know, to make its calculations, not what you drew on the screen. Alrighty, so once you have that set up, like I said, keep in mind that your field dimensions, if you don't want it to draw on the field, it has to be the same size. Your GRLE files need to be the same size. Your fruit density and your field dimensions, they've got to be the same size. If not, draw around your fields and make sure that you don't even put an entry in there for field dimensions. Okay, if you don't plan on using it, don't even put the entry, because what will happen is, since they're 2 different sizes, that means they're 2 different resolutions. So this field under a different resolution is probably like a big circle over here. So next time you're over here trying to lay down some foliage, it's not going to color in that area because it thinks that there's a field there, even though there's not and you can't see it. It's because your resolutions are different. So just trust me on this one, guys. Make sure that your dimensions, your resolutions are the same for your fruit density and your field dimensions if you want this to work properly. Like I said, if not, just take that line out of there. You don't even want that in there. Okay. Now remember with this that there is no undo, right? You can't Control Z or anything like that. There is a script for the 19 version where it wasn't part of the actual Foliage Creator. Somebody kind of added on to that, but you could delete the foliage. All right. But that unfortunately doesn't work for FS22. It throws an error. I'm working on that one right now. But for now, what I like to do is when I have my field here, where I have a state where I'm okay with the way things are. Okay. So there's no grass, there's no bushes, there's no nothing. I save my file. I save everything just the way it is. Okay. And then when I go ahead and I run the script, and we'll run that right now. So let's see what we get. Go to scripts, FS22 Foliage Creator. And you got to give it a second or two, let it do its thing. Okay, we're going to go down there. Alrighty, so you can see I have grass, right? So painted grass because this was my base layer. It was that modifier Meadow 4, right? And then my bushes are pretty well spread out, so that doesn't look too bad. It's not overwhelming bushes, right? So it's nice and random, and that's what I like because it took that decision out of my hands. I'm not the one that had to figure out where these bushes were going to go. It put them down for me, so that looks pretty good. All right, now you can mess with any bushes that are not any bushes, any deco foliage that you want, any foliage, right? So you can see I got some of this, oh, I forget what that would be called in there, that deco foliage. It's like Rosa or something like that. That's either Apra or this whatever that is, that Ro. I'm not even going to say it. Okay, but that's what it is. All right, so that's what that does. So you can mix it up a little bit, you know, if you want to put more like weeds, or, you know, you want to put like a small dense mix, you want to add that in there. You know, the sky's the limit. Experiment with it, come up with some different combinations and you know, use those in different scenarios. Now you can see where it did go around my field for me really nicely. Okay. Now there's this little bit here that it didn't color in, and that's not because of the script. What that is when I colored in my field, right, for my field dimension, I actually went bigger than what my colored in field was, which isn't a big deal. All right. So it did what it was supposed to do. If, you know, I went by and I shrink that up a little bit, it would be just fine. It would look fine. Okay. So everything worked okay. But now for some reason, if you don't like this, keep this in mind too, that what you want to do is just, what I do is I hit this recycle button to reload the i3D file. Okay. And that's how I undo it. Or you could erase it. You can go through and just erase everything. But the one thing you don't want to do is to rerun that script, okay? It's not like field dimensions where you can keep rerunning it and rerunning it and rerunning it. Because what it'll do is, let's say you put down like your density, right? And there was too much, you know, way too many bushes and they were everywhere. So what you could do is thin that out, you know, and say, okay, I want to lower that number so I don't want so many bushes. But what will happen is it will leave the original ones there. All right. So it might delete some of them, because basically what it's going to do is it's going to write over top of that bush. But if it does it randomly, so if there's like no bush there, it's obviously not going to overwrite something that's not there. Hard to explain, but just trust me. Every time you do this, if you're not happy with the result, in one fashion or another, delete it. Whether you right click, delete it, or you reload your i3D file, you're going to want to delete it that way. So like I said, we'll run this one more time. And I was actually pretty happy with it. You know, it didn't look too bad to me. Now, I don't always use this in this circumstances for fields. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. An awful lot. I definitely use it an awful lot for forests. When I do forests, I definitely do that a lot. And depending on where these fields are, like, so this is a little more open field, like around the edges of my actual farm fields. I don't usually have so many bushes, but you get what I'm saying. Okay. So if I'm happy with this result, which looks okay, then I would just save it again. I would go ahead and I would save. And then this way, when I work on to my next area, right, when I move over to my next area, I'm able to use this recycle button again, and it'll restore me back to this state. Okay, so now if you want to do another area, all right, so you go back into your infoLayer paint mode, all right, and we go to, infoLayer paint mode. You're going to have to delete what's already here. So we're done with this area, so you need to delete this and then color in a new area, okay? You're going to, sooner or later, it's going to happen where you're going to forget to do this. And then when you run your script again, basically you're just adding more to what you already have here. So make sure you don't do that. And it also works that way, by the way. So if you already have it the way you like it, where it's nice and spread out like this, right? Okay, it's not too many bushes, looks pretty good. If you forget to delete that and you color in an area over there, this happens a lot on bigger maps. You know, maybe if it's not such a big white area and you just happen to not notice it, And when you run the script again, you're going to start to have a lot more bushes down there because it'll basically just keep adding to it, right? Sometimes it'll overwrite a bush, but more often than not, it's just going to keep adding to it because it's a random, right? It's a random script. It's going to put these bushes in random areas, right? So it'll just keep adding to it. Alrighty, so that's pretty much it. Like I said, I mean, now that you know what everything does, you just need to play around with it. You know, play around with your different textures, play around with the combinations. You know, what do you guys like to put in your fields usually? Is it bushes? Is it some of that Rumex, right? We're having a hard time finding one here because I don't have it set. I have it set pretty dense, so there's not too many of them, right? But this really... it helps out your map, you know, by adding this stuff for you, and you don't have to come through and by hand just start adding these things in here, right? It makes things so much easier. All right. Now, if you have something like the side of the road that you like to do, like the side of the road, you want to have more weeds, you want to have more of certain things, right? Create yourself a new section in your script and then put those values in there, you know, add those deco foliages that you like to see along your road. Okay. And then, you know, and then when you work on this, you can come through and just kind of, you know, paint along the side of your road, you know, and then when you run it, just make sure that you pick, or when you paint it, you're picking the section that you added, right? So you can even name it, you know, like side road, and then run it. And then there you go. Your foliages are all done for you. You didn't have to come through and you didn't have to do them by hand. And there's certain areas like sometimes I have certain areas where I really like to put my, my foliage and stuff pretty thick, you know, my bushes are thick with bushes and weeds and all kinds of gnarly stuff. And in that respect, what I'll do is in that grouping, then I'll just jack that up to a much higher value and it'll lay it in a lot denser. So it really is a good script. You know, it's one of those that once you have it figured out, and you should have a pretty good idea by now on what it does and how to work with it, right? Then just start playing around with the values, experiment a little bit with the values and the different deco combinations and stuff like that, and you'll come up with something good. So like I said, again, remember with the fruit density and the field dimension with bitmap, if you don't want it to draw on your fields, they do need to be the same size. Now, for some reason, I don't know if you really want to go down with the fruit density. I kind of think that's not going to work. Okay. What I recommend, my recommendation to you is to bring your field dimension with bitmap, increase the resolution on that because you have full control over that. You can make that any resolution you want. All right. So since that one you have control over, I recommend bringing that up to 4096 and not trying to bring the other one down. Okay. And that's it. So like I said, play around, experiment, have lots and lots of fun. I hope you were able to learn something from this video. Like I said, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if this helped you out at all. And with that being said, I am Bauer Brown, and I will see you on the next one.